Hello, and welcome to part 2 of this series of describing the astrological chart. I mentioned at the end of part 1 that there's a way of looking at a birth chart, which is that it's a map. Now, a map is not a script. Some people think, possibly because of the type of language used in media columns, that all astrologers believe in fate or destiny. And some do. I'm one of the astrologers that don't believe in fate or destiny as such. I think that there are implications, but also we have control and variations within our ability to make decisions. So for me, an astrological chart isn't like a script, and we're not some puppet living out this scripted fate. An astrological chart for me is more akin to having a... So the birth chart is more akin to a map. Now, if you had a street map of London, like an A to Z of the streets of a city, it wouldn't drive the car. A map doesn't get in the car and make you go down certain roads. The map just shows you where those roads are, and it's the driver that controls and decides which pathways they're going to go along. An astrological birth chart is like that. It shows a box of potentials, a range of potentials and parameters of potentials that we most likely to be able to participate in and make use of. Now, some of those potentials may flourish, some of those potentials may lie dormant and slumbering for the whole life. There might be some potentials that are flourishing that you really wish they weren't, and there might be other potentials that you haven't really thought of yet. And discovering them can inspire an idea, and you kind of think, hey, actually, this map suggests that I can do this. And then off you go, and something flourishes. So exploring the astrological map or birth chart isn't like reading a script of somebody. What we do is we describe the potentials that exist within a person, and then it's up to that individual to decide what they think about that. You know, we are not judges of human beings, we're merely describers of human experience. Now, I also mentioned before about this idea that a birth chart shows complex and sophisticated things. The different things that we do, for example, being optimistic or being pessimistic or daydreaming or being logical, are symbolized by the planets. The planets represent functions of human behavior and experience. Astrologers tend to talk about the solar system or the cosmos in an allegorical sense, not literally. The literalism is in the calculation. So we look at the positions of planets, and once that's set, we then leave literal interpretation and begin to talk in allegorical terms. So, for example, if a human being has a tendency towards pessimism, that might be symbolized in their astrological chart by the planet Saturn. So Saturn represents pessimistic approaches, pessimistic views. And when we talk about a person's Saturn, we're actually talking about the individual's tendencies for pessimism. So all of these qualities and all of these things aren't things from outside that are, sent to us by magic beams. Now, old astrological texts, of course, do speak like this. In a pre-Newtonian world, people didn't know about gravity. The concept of gravity didn't exist in their thinking. Before Copernicus, no one had really settled on the idea of a heliocentric solar system, although a heliocentric solar system was proposed in ancient Greece thousands of years ago. It wasn't until Galileo that somebody actually said, actually, I really think this is the case. And he was put under house arrest by the Spanish Inquisition for 20 years for being a heretic. And so these are really talking about perceptions and models of reality. So as science advances and we find out new perspectives, new ways of looking at the universe, so you might find that some of these older ways don't necessarily talk about astrology accurately either. So in a world pre-Newton where people didn't know about gravity, it was said that planets have influences, as if they're like kind of magic rays or beams So an Aristotelian astrologer, for example, would think that there would be the will of the prime mover, which was filtered through Saturn, filtered through Jupiter, and so on until it gets to the sublunar world. And these form like pressures that touch you on the head, pressures of avarice or laziness or lust or greed or whatever, and then you respond to those pressures. Post-Newtonian, everybody knows about gravity, but then Einstein came along and talked about space-time. And then we have a quantum theory and chaos and complexity theory, which start to disprove certain Einstein theories too. And yet in society, gravity is still the word we use to describe the phenomena of something up falling down. So the language that's used is quite important. And if you look at complexity theory or systems theory, chaos theory, you'll find that there are constructs in that which begin to allow an astrology to have a basis in a scientific way, in that we are part of a non-linear dynamical system. And it's not that there are magic rays or beams or influences. However, there are movements within the system, and we are part of that system. And so therefore, everything within a system is affected by any change in any part of it. But to go down those roads requires a lot of depth of thought and a lot of research into complexity theory and things. And that's not what this video is about. However, the kind of language that you get from horoscope columns and things that talk about influences, I think is an error because it's slightly misleading. So, back to the chart. Now, the different things that human beings do, whether it's creating, dreaming, calculating, planning, adventuring, rebelling, transforming, changing, crushing, destroying, building, thriving. All of these different qualities are symbolized by planets. And because a planet in astrology is a symbol, that means it has many meanings attached to it. Words are often a bit like that as well. For example, if I said, oh, went away last weekend and was stayed at a hotel in Cornwall, fantastic. And then, what did you picture? Did you picture a holiday inn, a converted farmhouse, a B&B, a glass skyscraper? What kind of image came to mind when I said hotel in Cornwall? Well, a lot of people would find that if you did a survey, that different people would have thought or pictured different things. So the English word hotel has a specified meaning in the dictionary, but our subjective understanding of that is like a pyramid of differences, So in just saying we stayed at a hotel, although the word is understood by English speakers, the meaning of it has such a variable, such a variety of possible interpretations. And that's just with a literal word. Now with a symbol carries lots of words. And each one of those words has varieties of meaning attached to those. So astrology isn't a literal medium that describes character like fated, set in stone, this is you. It's more fluid than that. It's like a hologram rather than a photograph. It describes layers of meaning and depths of meaning, which can vary and move and change. And so describing these things and the whole breadth of it to a person takes a bit of time. For example, if we were to say, well, this is Jeff when he talks to a traffic warden, this is Jeff when he talks to his mum, just describing that might take a little bit of time. But then if you kind of think of all the possible people Jeff might meet in life, then all of a sudden, that 4-sentence paragraph of a Facebook profile becomes a voluminous book describing all the possible Jeffs. And then there's the other thing that happens as well, and that is that Jeff isn't a static person. He changes and grows. We change and grow. We develop. What's important to us when we're 15 might be completely irrelevant by the time we're 52. A holiday that we might choose when we're 19 could be completely different to our choice of holiday when we're 62 years old. So astrology is complicated because people are complicated. And a lot of people want astrology to be simple and accurate, but you can't have both of those. Because if you go for simplicity, that's going to be at the detriment of accuracy. If you go for accuracy, then there's no way you can be simple with that, because it's complicated, you know. So professional astrology is complex and leaves simplicity behind, because a lot of people want astrology to be accurate, and that means that we have to describe not just all the different facets of who you are, but also how they change through time. So when you look at an astrological chart, you can describe Henrietta when she's 10, but that would be a completely different description when she's 23, totally different again perhaps when she's 55. So when a person goes to look at their astrological chart, the time frame they're in also has a bearing on what's important to them, what's of value, what isn't. You know, if you're doing the chart of someone who's 16, they're probably interested in relationships more than, you know, the retirement years. If you're doing the astrological chart for someone who's 55, they're probably more interested in their health and things rather than, you know, the shenanigans they got up to when they were a teenager. So there's a way of looking at this like a map that takes these things into account, and I'll begin the next part with that.